All right, guys. Hello and welcome. It is the day before weigh-ins, Thursday, September 21st, and we've got some stuff to talk about. First, I just wanted to touch on this here. November's UFC 295 co-main will be Yuri versus Alex. That is interesting. And 296 headliners, Leon Edwards and Colby Covington. With Pantoja and Royval serving as the co-main. Pretty sweet. Stoked for these cards. But yeah, now that that's out of the way, let's get on to a very quick recap of UFC Fight Night or NOCHE UFC. I think it was the actual number on this sucker. Oh, 227, I guess. Or I think it was a Vegas number, perhaps. But, anyways, we started with Josephine Nutson, and yeah, that was a domination. There isn't much to say here, really, other than the fact that she struggled to get a finish against someone who couldn't fight well, um, which is notable. I don't really see her with okay without some pretty significant improvements. I don't see her doing too well against the upper echelon of the division. But who knows? We'll see how that goes for her coming up. She's been super active. I think her fight on Contender Series was like last month or something like that. So she's probably going to take a couple of months off, I'm assuming. But they're probably going to try to turn her around and build her fairly soon. She came in as an enormous favorite here. Does it say the odds? Yeah, minus 575 plus 410. Huge favorite, and at that high of a favorite, you'd think she could maybe get a finish, but it didn't come for her, and it is what it is. The next fight was Alex Reyes, brother of Dominic Reyes, I guess, um, against Charlie Campbell. So Alex Reyes, I guess, was coming off of a long layoff due to injury. Um, and yeah, he sort of got picked apart in this by Charlie Campbell. It was over pretty quick. I feel like it could have been over a little bit sooner, but Charlie was patient with the knockout, but he ended up getting it a little bit later in the first round. And here we go: Tracy Cortez and Jasmine Jasudavicius. I was rooting for Jasmine. Uh, she's from just a town away, so always like to root for the hometown, so to speak, fighters. Um, Living on the Canadian side of the Niagara region, there aren't too many fighters that have come out of this area, so it's cool when people do. Um, she fought Tracy Cortez, obviously, and it was kind of a pick 'em going into it. But yeah, Tracy, you could tell, was landing with a lot more power, um, and did enough to win it, I guess. I didn't necessarily agree with the 3-0 unanimous decision, but it is what it is. Next one was kind of weird. Edgar Chairez and Daniel Lacerda um, ended in the first round, but was overturned uh, like immediately after the fact. So what happened was Edgar, I would say, was winning the fight up until that point, although it was pretty early that this happened. Um, got him in I believe it was like sort of like a front, was it a standing guillotine that he ended up getting him in? Um, anyways, ref checks on Lacerda, and he immediately after getting checked on goes like arm goes limp, completely limp. Um, I remember thinking to myself at the time that he had gone out. So I didn't necessarily agree with the ref stoppage, but realistically, he could have let it go a few more seconds. Um, yeah, I don't know. It was a little bit premature, and I was kind of mad at it getting overturned because I avoided it from my parlay. Um, but what are you going to do? We move on. I, by the way, I really like Chirez. He's dope. Um, I don't know, something about him. His personality is just, I don't know. Seems like he belongs here. But anyways, we've got Kopylov and Fremd up next. The Russian Chase Hooper. Um, I mean the strike numbers don't really tell the story. Fremd was having some success. Assumed he would have a little bit more because of the reach advantage that he had, or the height advantage that he had. Uh, but that wasn't the case. Our boy Kopylov um, really put it on him. It was pretty even, I guess, in the first round, but by the end of that first round, like he went back to his stool looking all sorts of messed up. And when I say he, I mean Fremd. You could tell that the finish was imminent, but he survived almost to the end of the second round, but got pieced up pretty bad. Yeah, that is about it. Roman Kopylov, performance of the night bonus, his way as well. Then we had Lupita Godinez and Elise Reed. Um, heavily favored, and rightfully so. It was pretty, I guess, I don't want to say competitive, but it looked like Elise had a chance um, in the earlier parts, but overall just ended up getting completely dominated. Um, and nearly her arm busted up. Um, yeah, I couldn't believe that Elise wasn't tapping from that. She had pretty good fulcrum on the arm bar. She was trying it straight down the center, and it wasn't like it was bending; it was hyperextending. Um, but she couldn't get it, and then she tried it like over the hip to the side, and that wasn't working either. I thought for sure she was going to break it. I feel like she was in a position where if she was really mean, she could have, but she didn't. Um, Submission ended up coming anyways in the second round. Just pretty much domination for the whole fight. Uh, Loopy's really something special. I'm stoked to see her move up the ranks and fight some bigger names. I think she's going to do really well. Um, Up next, another Canadian bad boy, and Kyle Nelson fighting Fernando Padilla. That was a pretty competitive fight. I don't really think Kyle deserved the the 2-1 underdog on the odds makers. cards there, but ends up scoring the unanimous decision. I think some folks were pretty surprised by that, but um, I thought he had it, although I was a little bit worried when it went to decision. But yeah, I'm glad that he was able to get that. Always like seeing him fight. Um, Daniel Zellhuber and Christos Giagos. That was an interesting one, wasn't it? Um, I feel like Daniel doesn't do too well when he gets stormed right out the gate. Um, he got hurt pretty bad by Christos. I thought that was going to spell the end of the fight, but he ended up pulling through, recovering from that early flurry, and going on to win by submission in the second round again. A lot of second round finishes in this card, eh? Not as many as I remember. Okay, whatever. And then we move on to Golden Boy, Raul Rosas, and Terrence Mitchell. Um, Terrence Mitchell had no business in there. He got a 54-second TKO, and Raul Rosas moves, I guess, up the ranks. Um, it's really hard to say how he's gonna fare against skilled competition. So far, he hasn't really faced any. But we move on. He got a nice dropped him with a real nice. Was it a left or a right? Straight down the center and just sat him down and finished it off. Up next, it was Kevin Holland and JDM Jack Della Maddalena. Um, JDM favored coming into the contest and showing why he was. It did go to a split decision, but I feel like it was a pretty clear win for JDM. I love Kevin Holland. He's an amazing fighter. Um, and he landed some good shots. But overall, JDM looked more composed. He was landing more damaging flurries. He landed that crazy 5-piece combo. Um, that's probably going to live on in his highlight reel forever. Um, yeah, what was it? It was like body, head, body, head. It was fucking crazy. Crazy. And then we move on to the main event. Sort of a weird outcome. Oops. But yeah, Alexa, Alexa had her really hurt a couple of times in the fight, and yeah, what was the knockdown? Was that round two? Yeah, round two. There was that knockdown. Um, it was hard to say. I had Alexa winning. Um, but that 10-8 scorecard was egregious. And had it not been the case, if it was only a 10-9 and it would have gone Valentina's way, um, I wouldn't have been mad about that either. Especially my bet slip would not have been mad about that. But I still did end up profiting about, let's see, yeah, it wound up being, let's see, 2.5 times profit or so. One sec. So, ultimately, I'm not I'm not mad about the decision because I would have been satisfied had the judges scored it either way, really. Um, it's a shame that the outcome is sort of tainted by a controversial scorecard. Um, and yeah, realistically, had that been a 10-9, which it should have been, Valentina would have been the new champ. And I would have won a decent amount of money. Um, so I wouldn't have been mad at that either. But again, the way that it is, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. So from that, we move on to get this up over here too. Why not? I feel like the UFC website has a little bit of a better interface, I suppose. But this, at first glance, I was thinking it was going to be a really hard card to break down. But I mean, well, it sort of is. uh, I'm pretty confident in some of the picks that I've decided upon for this event. Let's see here. So we've got Fiziev and Gamrot headlining the card. Uh, Interesting matchup. Classic sort of wrestler versus striker. Um, so it should be interesting. But let's start at the top of the card. So we've got Montserrat Rendon and Tamiris Vidal. It's kind of a coin flip in this one. I don't know too much about these two going in. I know Tamiris has a win over Eileen Perez, who's sort of starting to make waves, I guess, um, with some of her performances thus far in the UFC. Um, Montserrat Rendon is 5-0, so she's undefeated coming into this. But I've looked into her previous opponents, and as is pretty typical for the first five or so fights, professional fights, they're not really against any notable competition, right? Um, so from there, we have Mizuki Inoue against Hannah Goldie. The records don't really, I don't think, are going to dictate the story of this fight. Um, Mizuki Inoue is kind of like a low key beast, right? She may be 14-6 with no knockouts, but she's got a ton of submissions. She's fighting at a Sarah Longo, and her only losses are to killers, right? Like, I don't know about Emi Tomimatsu, but she got that win right back in her next fight. So, um, yeah, like Karolina Kowalkiewicz, whatever. Polish names are so tough for me. Um, Alexa Grasso, she got a loss to Virna Jandiroba and Amanda Lemos. So, not anything to really discredit her too much for, right? And then you got Hannah Goldie on the other hand, who's had some pretty lackluster performances, right? She loses to Molly McCann. She loses to Diana Belbita. She loses to Miranda Granger. Um, yeah, she has a win against Jillian Robertson back in 2016, but in her professional debut, that doesn't really say much for where she is 6 years down the line, right? Or it shouldn't. um, anyways, I think Mizuki is going to win this, but we move on. Muhammad Usman and Jake Collier. Muhammad Usman's obviously a beast. He's huge. Jake Collier is a swollen middleweight on a pretty bad losing streak. The odds makers have Usman pretty heavily favored to win, and I think they're right with that. But I feel like Collier might be able to surprise us here. I don't want to say for sure because it's a tough one to call. Um, it always is with giant dudes in there just absolutely swinging hammers. Pause. Um, Cody Brundage and Jacob Malkoon. Jacob Malkoon is heavily favored in this matchup by the odds makers, at least. But I feel like Cody Brundage has a chance. He looked like absolute shit in his last fight, but he might be able to come back from that. I'm sure he's going to be motivated to come back from a performance like that and really show out to some degree. But Malkoon is a teammate of Robert Whitaker's, I believe, and he is a beast. Few notable losses there to Brendan Allen and Phil Haas. Um, KO and decision. Um, I don't know. It's a tough one to call. I think the odds makers probably have it right, but it's a fight. And if Brundage lands, it could spell the end. Who knows, right? But I'm probably leaning the way of Jacob Malkoon just for the fact that Brundage let me down so hard in his last fight. Um, Next, we got Tim Means and Andre Fialho. Tough one to call. Tim Means obviously is huge. Um, Apparently, only 2 inches in height difference between the two of them. Um, Fialho's got some knockout losses. Um, Tim Means has some nasty knockout power, but so does Fialho. Let's see. KO ratio 19-2 versus 13-5. I mean, the numbers state that Fialho is probably going to get knocked out, but it also like doesn't happen very easily, you know. Um, yeah, Fialho's proven pretty durable um, in a lot of his previous fights, especially in the UFC that I've seen anyway. Um, yeah, it's tough to say, but Tim Means is long in the tooth. He's 39 versus Fialho at 29. I think Fialho is gonna win this for no reason other than age. 39 is old to be fighting, and it's very rare to see people not like at least lose a little bit. So, I'm gonna edge Fialho on that, but without counting Tim Means out as a potential victor. I think whichever way it goes, it's gonna end by KO or TKO. Then we have Dan Argueta and Miles Johns. Um, not all that much information on these guys, right? 9-1. Um, Dan Argueta has a win, a loss, and a no contest in the UFC so far. But pretty significant win streak before that, from Combache to LFA. Fight Card Entertainment. All right. Um, Miles Johns, he is a beast. Um, not all that active. He hasn't fought yet in 2023. Hmm. I don't know. It's it's a tough one to call. Miles Johns comes out shot out of a cannon. Um, but I don't know. It's really tough to say. Um, I'm probably gonna abstain from a pick in this one, at any capacity, but I think Argueta has more ways to win. We'll say that. If Miles Johns makes even the slightest of mistakes, I think Argueta can capitalize and will take the win. But I think in that process, Miles has the potential to clip him and do some damage, shifting the balance of the fight there. But anyways, we move on. Ricardo Ramos and Charles Jourdain. Um, another kind of tough one to call. Dude, sort of similar in stature. 28'5'9", 27'5'9", 14-6 and 16-4. On paper, these guys are pretty similar. I feel like Ramos likely has the edge in or on the ground, whereas Jourdain might have the edge on the feet. But it's really a tough call. Ramos has been knocked out, but Jourdain's only been stopped once by submission. I'm gonna go with my Canadian boy, Jourdain, on this one, and we move on. Brian Battle, AJ Fletcher. Um, Ryan Battle's season of The Ultimate Fighter was one of the only more recent seasons that I actually sort of paid attention to. So I have a natural affinity towards liking the guy. Um, but AJ Fletcher is a tough customer. He did get beat up really bad by Fakhretdinov. Um, Fletcher's lost two decisions, one to Semmelsberger, one to Losa. But yeah, he can do it all. Submission, 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 TKO, TKO, decision, TKO. Um, it's going to be a tough one for Battle. What are their 6'5", 29, 6'2"? I feel like if Battle can keep him at range, prevent him from really coming in um, and getting like a huge haymaker punch or a meaningful takedown, um, where he can secure some sort of position and get a submission. Fletcher can get it done, but if Battle keeps him from executing his game, I guess I think Battle can get it done, but I feel like one well placed haymaker from Fletcher will shift the fight in Fletcher's favor. But we move on. Um, Marina Rodriguez and Michelle Watterson Gomez. I feel like this one's going to be more or less a replay of their last fight. I don't know really how far Michelle has come um, since her last fight, but typically it's rare to see new wrinkles this far along in someone's career. But yeah, I think Marina gets it done again, and not much more to say about that. We move on to Bryce Mitchell and Dan Ige. Tough one to call. Obviously, if it goes to the ground, I think Ige's going to be in some serious trouble. But if Bryce opts to strike a little bit too much, has a little bit too much confidence in his stand up, I think he has the potential to get clipped by Ige. Ige's really accurate with his punches, and he's really fast. Um, I feel like he has a potential to put on sort of like a striking clinic of sorts if he can catch Bryce on the entry. But yeah, it's a tough one to call. Um, Bryce has been dealing with some injuries lately, so you don't know how much that's been affecting him. And we move on to the main event. The main, the main event. Fiziev and Gamrot. They only have two losses apiece. Um, Fiziev's coming to Gaethje and Magomed Mustafayev. KO. That Vyacheslav Kiselev guy. That was the guy that almost let Benoit Saint Denis pass away in the cage, I'm pretty sure. Um, but yeah, he's on the tear up until that Gaethje loss. Gamrot himself was was on quite a tear until the Dariush loss. He's got a loss to Kutate Ladze there. Um, on paper, high level strikers seem to give him a little bit of a problem. Um, so we can see how that plays out, I suppose. But I think if Gamrot gets him down, it's going to be Fiziev is going to have a hard time fighting that off. Any sort of submission attacks, well, or even just fighting off control. I think if it goes to the ground, it's the story's going to write itself. But you never know. It's a crazy sport. This mixed martial arts that we love so much. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Again, it's Thursday afternoon, just past 3 p.m. Eastern right now. So we'll see how everyone looks on the scales. I like doing a little, I might do a post weigh in stream just to sort of go over um, how people are looking, I guess, at the official weigh ins before the ceremonials. Um, Try to sneak it in between the two if I can. And yeah, with that in mind, I will see you guys then. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if this is your sort of thing. It would be greatly appreciated. And yeah, could use all the help I could get getting this channel off the ground. It's a slow grind, but appreciate y'all for being here for the ride. All right, love you guys, and see you next time. All right, bye bye.